Going to wait for everybody to trickle in here, so bear with us, and we will start in about 30 seconds here. So I know people are trickling in one by one, but thank you for being here. Okay, it looks like we have most everyone in here. So welcome. My name is Derek Fazenden. I am the Director of Communications here for the Graduate Division. And first of all, I would like to say congratulations because you are in this webinar today because you have accepted an offer to attend UCI next year as a graduate student. So welcome to UCI. We are very excited to have you here. And really the main purpose for today is we know, obviously with all the things going on in our world right now, there's a lot of uncertainty and a lot of questions I'm sure you may have. So that's what we're here to do. So first of all, I would like to just, if you look down to the bottom right of your screen, there is a Q&A box. So please use this Q&A box to type in your question, and we will get your question and we will go and answer each one of your questions one by one. So use that box to type in your questions and we'll be sure to answer them. So I'd like to first introduce our fantastic panel of experts here. We are joined by Graduate Dean Gillian Hayes, Ruth Quinnen, the Senior Director of Admissions and Academic Affairs, Connie Malone, the Director of Housing and Administrative Services, and myself. So without further ado, I will hand off the microphone to Dean Hayes to give a brief opening statement and hopefully a rundown of what campus life should look like coming into the fall, and then we'll open it up for your questions.
Thank you, Derek, and thank you to Connie and Ruth for being here, and to all of the people both attending by the Zoom webinar, as well as those of you watching on Facebook Live, and those of you who will be watching this later on the recording. We just want to say welcome to all of you. You know, as Derek mentioned, congratulations on your acceptance, but also welcome to the Anteater family, or continuing for those of you who maybe are coming back as alums. We are so glad to have you joining us in the fall, and we are so sorry that you are doing so under the tough circumstances that we are living with. This is certainly not the world that anyone wanted to have going on here in 2020. So I'm going to walk through a few quick things that are sort of common questions that we get in, or things that people sent ahead of time. So big thank you to those of you who sent questions ahead of time. The first thing, and probably the most important, is the safety and well-being of our students and our faculty and staff is by far the highest priority for this campus. And so I just want to make sure you know that. No one knows what's going to happen with COVID, and we can't guarantee anything. But what I will tell you is that it is your well-being, as well as those of our staff and faculty, that consistently are the number one thing in every meeting I'm in with campus leadership. So we are excited to begin. We've actually begun about 3 weeks ago, returning some research and scholarly work to campus. And bit by bit, we hope that we will continue to return to campus, but always with the idea that everyone's safety and well-being is the most important. So with that regard, I want to let you know one piece of good news, which is we believe around 30 to 40% of graduate course instruction in the fall will be offered in person. And I say offered because we are also requiring that any course that is offered in person, that we do not require people to be in person. So it could be that you can't make it here. Maybe you live on the East Coast right now and traveling to California is difficult and you don't make it here in time for an in-person course. Or maybe you need to care for children who are not yet back in school, or you need to care for an aging parent or someone, or you have your own health concerns. No one's going to ask you why you choose not to be in person. You do not have to attend your courses in person. We will not require it, but we are excited that we believe we will be able to offer them in person, at least about 30 to 40%. And again, if things improve, then more into the winter and spring quarters and so on. So that's probably one of the most important things that people are often asking us about. Housing, I know there's a lot of questions about housing, and so we're very glad to have Connie Malone here, who will be able to answer those in detail. But first thing I just want to say is our housing folks have been absolutely extraordinarily wonderful in helping keep our continuing students in their housing, even beyond guarantees during this very tough time. And for those of you in PhD programs and other programs that come with a housing guarantee, they're really working with us to ensure that you are covered as best we can. So they've been sending out, many of you probably have housing offers at this point, and others of you, they will be coming if you don't have them yet. If you are unable to make it to campus in the fall, let's say, for example, for our international students, they're unable to get a visa, you have travel difficulties, even for the domestic students and so on, they will work with you. We can't hold specific units. You can't sort of be like, yes, I like that unit and that roommate, just hold it open for me for the fall. But they will work with you to make sure that when you are able to get here in January, for example, the guarantee is not impacted, even though the specific unit won't be. We're not able to say just because you don't want to come, you don't have to. That would be a little bit too far, but for those who truly are unable, we are able to be flexible in those kinds of things. I see that we do have a question specifically about students being asked to leave campus. I want to be super clear about this because it's really important, and we weren't great about communicating it in the spring, and it caused some confusion. Graduate and family housing is built very differently than undergraduate housing. And so graduate and family housing residents were never asked to leave campus and will not be asked to leave campus in a shelter-in-place situation. These are your homes. They are as safe as any other homes. They don't have the sort of massive shared bathrooms and shared kitchen kind of situations. They don't have roommates within the same bedroom, all of those kinds of issues that we see in the undergraduate housing. So want to be super clear about that. Okay, so back to what happens when you enroll in the fall outside of housing. Graduate welcome and orientation, as well as TA training and other kinds of things, are all going to be moved virtual. We do not believe it will be a very good idea, or possibly even legal under the state of California's rules, to have large gatherings like we would normally have with orientation. On the plus side, this has made for a really cool opportunity for our staff and other folks all over campus to really radically rethink orientation. And so we're adding in new modules, we're creating a lot of exciting new content for you. And we've been told in the past by students that sometimes that couple of days of orientation is just really overwhelming, and they wish they could return to the content later in the quarter or even later in the year. Well, guess what? It's all going to be recorded. So you will be able to return to those materials at a later time. Please do mark your calendars, though, for Friday, September 25th. That will be the day of graduate welcome and orientation. And while many of the things will be recorded and available anytime, there will be some synchronous activities, so sort of live activities, if you will, but virtual, that we would love to have you be able to participate in if you are able. So those are sort of the key things. UCI was really ahead of the curve in a lot of ways in terms of online education. We have more accredited online graduate programs than any other UC. We have a really wonderful division of teaching excellence and innovation that's working very hard to get everything really working well for those courses that will be offered remote. We've deployed about 300 additional graduate students via a fellowship opportunity to learn about distance learning this summer and to support that transition. So while it is not ideal by any stretch of the imagination, I am actually really proud and confident in a lot of the things we're doing, particularly when I talk to my colleagues at other universities that I will not name, who are struggling a little bit more with some of this transition. So with that, I'm happy to answer questions for folks. But I also want to just turn it over quickly to both Connie and Ruth for any short comments that they might want to make regarding bringing you all to campus here in the fall. So let's start with Connie, because housing is always a particularly antsy point for our incoming students.
Sure. Thank you, Dean Hayes. So housing is very busy right now. I know the grad communities are in the process of sending out leases and getting them back. They are, I believe, just completing the graduate guarantee housing leases. So if any of you have not received your guaranteed housing offer yet, you could email the grad guarantee email account. That email address would be on our housing website, graduate housing page. For those who are master's students and who are on the housing wait list, the wait list is handled in date time order. So if spaces remain after guaranteed students are taken care of, the staff and the communities look to that wait list and begin making those kind of offers. If you only got on that wait list in the last couple months, I would advise people to look for off-campus alternatives. We do have a website that's linked to our housing website, and the address is basically offcampus.housing.uci.edu. And that site is exclusively for UCI students and affiliates, and you can search in the local area for housing. There are apartment listings as well as people who are renting out houses. So that's a good place to start in terms of if you're looking for off-campus housing. Yeah, so I think this summer is going to be more active than most summers because of the conditions that we're dealing with, and the fact that fall is going to be remote. So you can always email the grad housing to find out what your status is, but that's kind of where we are at this point, is we're trying to complete the guaranteed lease offers, and at some point, hopefully in July or August, potentially make some offers to the wait list. I will mention one other thing. So we do have some privately managed apartments on the campus. It's 5 different communities. As a group, they're known as American Campus Communities. And if you go on the housing website and click on the housing options tab, you'll see a link to their websites at the very bottom of that page. It'll say ACC Apartments. And you can apply to those communities as well, independently of your UCI housing application. I'm not sure what their wait lists are looking like, but it's an option that you have. Those apartments are furnished, and they're leased for 12 months at a time. Their open date for fall is not until September 26th. So it's a little bit late. If you have any reason why you need to be here before that, that could be an issue, but that's just another option, kind of in between our communities and off campus that you might want to look into.
And then just to follow up with Connie just said, before I give Ruth an opportunity to say a few words, I know you all are probably frantically writing notes down. Definitely always a good idea, but you will get a follow-up email with a bunch of information as far as contact information, website addresses, that will be sent to you following this webinar. So don't worry, we will send something out to you shortly in case you're not able to write down all the information right now.
Okay, my turn. Hi, I'm Ruth Quinn, and I'm the Senior Director of Admissions and Academic Affairs. And basically, I think my job is problem solving and helping students out. So we're really glad to have you. We're so happy that you'll be with us for fall, whether it ends up being in person or remotely. That is great either way. We're just delighted that you're wanted to come to UCI, and my email address will be in the resources that are sent out. I'm happy to answer any questions. We realize this is a really stressful time and that you're going to have a lot of questions. That is great. We're happy to answer anything we can, put you in touch with the resources that we have. And we do have a lot of resources, fortunately. We're happy about that. And just try and help and to smooth the transition and make you feel as comfortable and welcome as possible. So.
Thank you, Ruth. And yes, I do want to reiterate, there's a lot of crisis in higher education right now globally. We are very fortunate that here at UCI, we've been very well managed for many years. And going through a crisis is never good, but we are in a much better, more stable place in a whole variety of ways than many other places are. So thank you, Ruth, for mentioning that. We will continue to deploy resources to support you all as best as we can, because we are in that more stable place than some universities are. So for example, you may be seeing in the news, there are universities that retracted PhD offers. There are universities that are laying off or closing whole departments. We are not doing any of those things. So it's never totally safe feeling, I know, when you're in the kind of global crisis that we are in, but please know that we are here for you, and as healthy of an organization as can be considered, considering the context. So a few questions have come in through the chat. Thank you all so much. For those of you who joined late potentially and didn't hear Derek's intro, there is a Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. Please do go ahead and put questions in there. Please don't be shy. We find that anyone who has a question, the likelihood is at least one other person has that same question and didn't feel brave enough to ask it. So please do ask questions. One of the questions that has popped in is just asking again about fall learning remote options and so on. I know I mentioned that quickly and early, so I just want to mention it again for those who maybe arrived late. Right now, we are anticipating around 30 to 40% of coursework will be offered in person, but people will have remote options if you are unable to make it to campus, or if you have other reasons that it's not a good idea for you to be in a classroom. Those courses are all very, very strictly managed. So we do have a face covering order on our campus that will be enforced. We are developing very strict protocols for entry and exit to classrooms, how close together seats can be. They're actually physically removing seats. They're installing mechanisms to dump cleaning onto the classrooms multiple times per day. There's a whole bunch of facilities work that I don't know the full details of it all, but it's really sort of remarkable and impressive the lengths that they're going to ensure as much safety and well-being as we can. So those protocols will be in place for the in-person classes, and the remote options, again, for those of you that are unable to make it to campus, or if you are living here, which again, most of our PhD students are, but perhaps you have children that you're caring for at home or something else that makes it difficult for you to attend. So the official list of the classes, it's a great question. Thank you for asking that one. No, we don't have the official list yet. The registrar is currently going through and redoing the fall schedule, which is, as you might imagine, an enormous undertaking. So doing things like moving a 20-person class that might have been in a 30-person classroom into a 100-person classroom with some different protocols in place and so on. Once that schedule is redone, we'll send out a message to everyone letting you know that the classes then in the typical registration system will now show, either they'll explicitly show that they are online, or they'll continue to show a room. Right now, they all show the room they were originally assigned. So they're all gonna look in person and in the wrong rooms, basically, currently. So we're sort of working through that. For people asking about COVID-19 and abilities to conduct research, it's an excellent question. It's one our current students have been really struggling with. We see a wide level of variation here. So we see some students who their research has sped up dramatically. You can imagine if you are working on antivirals or manufacturing of new ways to clean face masks, or possibly even the psychology of trauma associated with COVID. These are all sort of topics that those students are probably going to finish their dissertations faster than they might have otherwise. We have others that their research is largely unaffected. That doesn't mean they're not affected, because of course they may be schooling children at home, they may be having other challenges, but their research is sort of largely unaffected. And then we have people who literally, we pulled them out of archives in other countries. We, shut down their wet labs. We closed their experiments. It's a very, very wide level of variation. So we're watching closely. I certainly expect some students to take longer than they might normally have. And all of the faculty are aware of this. And we ask them, I was just on a meeting with all of the school deans again this morning to say, remind your faculty, please, to be aware that students have particular challenges right now, and we need to help adjust research trajectories. We may need to adjust research topics and questions and all of those things in light of COVID. So that's absolutely something that the faculty are very much aware of and looking at, and we continue to watch closely. We expect this to be with us long after we have a vaccine and long after we have a cure, as we continue to view the sort of long-term impacts and so on. So sorry, I'm just trying to kind of cruise through the questions up here. Claudia has asked about schools retracting PhD offers and so on. The UC system is indeed facing budget cuts. I cannot speak for my sister campuses, although I have not heard of anyone doing any of those draconian measures anywhere in the UC the way that I have in some other states. But here at UCI, I can absolutely affirm your offers for support are 100% backed. They are backed by me, they are backed by your school deans, they are backed by the provost. There is, despite the budget cuts that we expect to be coming, we very much have plans in place to address those budget cuts, and I feel very confident that your funding offers are solid. So please do not let that be one more worry on top of the many other worries that I am sure you are going through right now. Another great question, Emily, thank you for the great question about remote pedagogical trainings. I would be very shocked if we didn't have many more of these. The good news is Michael Denon, the Vice Provost for Teaching and Learning, was really out in front of all of this as early as December of last year, thinking about how to deploy the instructional designers within his group, the additional support. The provost is absolutely behind the idea of we need to get our educational quality as high as possible. I personally have taught online for the last 4 years in one of our professional master's programs. I know just how difficult that is. And it actually turns out it's about 20 to 30% more expensive to teach online than in person. There's a great false myth out there that it's somehow cheaper to teach online, but no, if you do it in a high quality way, it's actually more expensive, but we are investing in that, absolutely. So for those of you that are thinking about being TAs, or you may one day want to be a professor and you know that we will have another pandemic in the future, getting that training while you're here is a really good thing. So absolutely, I don't know the details of what the Division of Teaching Excellence and Innovation will offer, but I am pretty confident that they will continue to engage in these kinds of efforts going forward. So with that, I think I will take a pause from some of these great questions because there are a whole bunch in here about housing. Connie, can you see the questions, or would you like Derek or I to read some of them to you?
Well, I see one about how, let's see, if students would be required to take their grad housing offer in order to maintain their housing guarantee in future years. Oh gosh, I don't believe so, but I will need to follow up and get confirmation for that.
Yeah, as of right now, we are really trying to pay close attention to people who cannot get here
Yeah.
rather than people who choose not to get here. So, and the reason for this is fairly simple. You're all really smart people or you wouldn't have gotten into the program here. It's sort of a rolling window of people's graduate housing guarantees, and there's X number of housing slots. And so what housing is trying to balance there is that. So if we had everyone say, no, I don't want to come this year, and I want my guarantee, we basically have double the people for the next however many years starting next year. So that's really challenging for housing. That said, the exciting news is you're bringing on what, Connie? How many more beds in about 2 years?
1,000, a little over 1,000.
So 1,000 more graduate housing slots in 2 years. So, you know, we are tight right now, but we are really looking forward to having that, and we will continue to have the most graduate and family housing, again, anywhere in the UC system for sure, and possibly anywhere in the state. I'm not sure about that.
The other part of the question was about if there's a shelter-in-place order and students chose to leave, would that impact their housing guarantee? Well, I can tell you that in the past spring, when we had a smaller number of graduate students leave, we had a lot of undergrads leave, but a relatively small number of graduate students. I don't believe that impacted their housing guarantee in future years.
That's correct. Yeah, it did. They saved their guarantee, and they will be able to move back in, not necessarily to the same unit, but we'll be able to move back in.
Yeah. And I see another question about if we have to move into housing and pay rent before we get access to fellowship TA funds, is there any way we can delay rent payments or otherwise manage those first few payments? We have a housing account counselor that you can contact, and that access, it's a very simple email. It's shac@uci.edu. That's SHAC@uci.edu. And, or look under the services tab of our website to learn about the potential for deferments. We do arrange for deferments. I'm not sure about the first payment, if we defer the first payment, but the best scenario is to talk to our account counselor and get details on your own situation.
And Connie, actually, I believe this is, excuse me if I'm pronouncing your name wrong, but I believe this is Upali's question. You can type, if you click type answer, you can put that email address in there. And that way they'll have some record of it as well. And then again, we will provide all this in a follow-up email, so not to worry. But
okay, I've done that. Let's see.
Thanks, everyone. We're all learning the intricacies of Zoom and the various other platforms that people have. While Connie's typing that in, I'm going to share with you, I just this morning received some new talking points from our Vice Chancellor for Student Affairs, who handles things like housing, but also student health, the esports arena, the child care center, all of those kinds of things. And there's some really good news in here. So I just opened it up while I was looking at these questions and want to share this with you. So again, as always, anything that happens in person on campus will follow the guidance of the Orange County Health Department, the Board of Regents, and the CDC, as well as the state of California, and so on. We have generally, as a campus, when those orders conflict, gone with the most, I'll call it conservative, not necessarily politically conservative, but health-oriented conservative interpretation. So for example, Orange County is not requiring face coverings, but the state of California is, and the city of Irvine is. So we are. And so you get an idea of how we sort of interpret those guidelines. Participants will adhere to a new agreement that is coming out July 30th called the Anteater Agreement, which is essentially a agreement that asserts our values around these kinds of things, that we will treat each other with respect, we will maintain our best public health guidance, and so on. And the following facilities will be open, providing modified programs and services. So Derek will send this out to you, but I'll just read you the list for now because it's a good list. The Anteater Recreation Center, the Student Health Center, some of the dining on campus, both retail and the sort of more traditional student dining, the student center, the esports arena, the childcare center, which has been a very important one that we need to get open, as well as the Fresh Hub, which has remained open during this time period. And university housing will continue to provide, and other parts of student affairs will continue to provide other on-campus sort of engagements. So, you know, again, even if your individual coursework is not in person. So for example, it was going to be a class that's just much too big for us to feel comfortable offering in person. That doesn't mean there won't be other things for you to do here on campus. For those of you in master's programs, much of that might look like things related to networking and bonding. For those of you in PhD programs, it might look quite a bit like your scholarship, you know, spending time in the library, spending time in the labs, spending time in a studio, those kinds of things. So Ruth, I'm going to hand to you a question here regarding mailing official transcripts to Graduate Division. Ruth is the czar of all things related to enrolling and admitting our students, so she will be able to answer that question for you.
So that's fine that you mailed it. That's great. It's probably hasn't been processed yet because we have very limited number of people in the office who are actually physically doing that. It's not a problem. It won't affect the issuance of an I-20. It won't affect your registration for fall. If, you know, we get later into the summer and it looks like it still hasn't been processed, please email me and I will personally look into it. But no, it will not affect your registration for fall. It won't affect getting your I-20. All of those things are based on the fact that you're an admitted student who said you are planning to come.
Thank you for that. So we have run out of questions in the official Q&A. So I'll stall a little bit and encourage people to ask questions. There comes one. Wonderful. So someone's asking about orientation for new grad students. Yes, we do have orientation. We have a central set of orientation activities. So September 25th, please mark your calendars. There will be a virtual but campus-wide grad orientation. I would also encourage you all, if you have not heard from them, reach out to the graduate program directors in your particular units, as there are sometimes school or program level orientation activities that you may want to make sure to get on your calendar. For those of you who are interested in serving as TAs, we do have a TA training called TAPDAP, which stands for something that I can never remember. And that will also be virtual. And that, to the question earlier about some of the digital pedagogy, I suspect that is a place where you will get a lot of additional instruction because our undergraduate program is nearly fully remote in the fall. And so TA responsibilities for those of you who will be serving in those roles will involve a lot of digital pedagogy. With regard to books or research in a university library, the good news about our library is the University of California system has a very extensive digital library. We are a very big university once you think about all of our campuses. And so for those of you who are not able to make it to campus, be sure you get the VPN login and other kinds of things, and OIT will help you with that, and we will help you with that during orientation and so on. And then you'll be able to get access to the journals as well as many scanned books and other things through the library digitally. As far as purchasing books, I don't actually know. We might have to find out the answer to that as to whether our bookstore can ship them to you or how that might work. Does anyone on the panel know the answer to that?
I do not. That's a really good question. So we'll have to research that and get back to the group.
Yeah, so we will work on that. TA duties. Certainly for those of you who are assigned as TAs in the fall, again, the vast majority of undergraduate coursework will be offered virtually. So anyone who is unable to make it here to campus in the fall should be able to get an appropriate virtual TA-ship. Those assignments are made by your local programs. So work with the associate and assistant deans in your schools Certainly we in grad division can help if you get stuck and you aren't able to find anything out about that, but it should be fine. Most of those assignments do not happen until very close to the quarter. So I would just ask you to be patient and sit tight for a couple of months. I would be very surprised if anyone's getting TA assignments before, sort of the 1st of September, and possibly even more like mid-September before those things. Great question about, do we know anything about winter term and onward? I would love to answer that question for you, but winter term is more than 6 months away. And I will tell you right now, 6 months ago, I did not think this is where we would be. So anything that I might tell you is almost certainly going to be me just guesstimating into the future. We are making plans now, much as we did for the fall. We are asking faculty at both the undergraduate and graduate level to give us lists of classes that are essentially, this class must be offered in person. It would be incredibly damaging to the pedagogy to be offered online. We would prefer this class be offered in person, but we'll figure it out if it's online. And this class is fine, online or in person, it kind of doesn't make a difference. And then the schedulers work with those priorities in relation to the public health context. We are very lucky at UCI in the fact that we have some of the best infectious disease researchers in the world on our faculty here in public health. So for those of you on Twitter, I highly recommend following Andrew Neumer. He puts out new models every single day and is sort of one of the people that the news channels call on to talk about COVID. So he's very involved. Bernadette, our Dean of Public Health, has an incredible infectious disease background, and she is leading up a couple of big efforts that are important here. One is a data safety monitoring board, which essentially means that every single week we're taking in all of the latest data that we can on transmission, on cases, on anything that we can get our hands on. And that board collectively is recommending decisions to the chancellor and others about what we should be doing. So I don't know what we're going to be doing in winter, but I know it will be informed by the science and the evidence that we have in front of us. The other thing that public health is doing, which is amazing for our graduate students, is they are training up a little over 100 students this summer to learn to do contact tracing. And that's part of a contact tracing fellowship that both supports their summers because so many are not able to go to internships or other kinds of work this summer, and also is going to allow us to be way out ahead of the curve if we need to do any contact tracing throughout the year. So that's what I can tell you about the rest of the year. We're sort of working a quarter at a time at the moment. We've got the question again about classes scheduled to be in person versus remote. Just a quick reminder that our registrar is scheduling those now. So please don't look at the course schedule at this moment. They will all look like they're going to be in person. Give us a few weeks and we'll let you know when the new course schedule is available, but that will be more clear about what things are going to be remote and which are going to be offered in person. Last couple of questions that I see in the chat. So someone's asking about checking out books. The library is working on this. For those of you who are local, we expect you will be able to check out books very soon, actually. So for our continuing students, this has been a big deal. There are some specific books that people want. Now, this is getting a little bit in the nitty gritties of it, but there is a really excellent digitizing book service that the UC is a part of. As soon as we open our libraries and make it such that you have access to those physical books, our licensing shifts. And then we're not able, any book that we have physical access to, we are no longer able to offer the digital access to. So the librarian is watching this very closely. We don't want to take away a resource from either our existing students or incoming students that they might really be counting on. And so we're kind of trying to figure that out, but they're looking at a variety of things like book delivery services and so on and so forth for both our libraries, checkouts, as well as interlibrary loans within the UC. Financial aid questions, I will defer you to the financial aid office, but let's see if Ruth might know the answer as to when financial aid awards might be available.
Usually I think that's toward the end of July, although they are packaging things as we speak and repackaging things. So I think they will be sending award letters out from now until probably the end of August. They do have to often repackage awards depending on whether students get, for example, a fellowship that they haven't seen until later, or a TA-ship that they don't see right away, because that factors into how much financial aid a student is eligible for. But they are sending them out, I believe, now, and will be doing so for the next couple of months at least.
Yeah. As you might imagine, with things like CARES Act funding, as well as just the overall COVID crisis, the Financial Aid Office has been doing some double duty and repackaging financial aid awards from this past year, as well as looking into the future. So they may be ever so slightly delayed, but thank you, Ruth, for that. Certainly email the Financial Aid Office if you have any questions there about those. The question is being asked about receiving funding through your program. Each school, and in fact, in many cases, each department and individual graduate program, for those of you who have funding offers, they package those things ever so slightly differently. So I would certainly encourage you reach out to the assistant dean, to the head of student affairs in your school, to a graduate program director. If you already know who your faculty advisor is for the fall, that's another good person to reach out to. Any of those folks who are more close to your program to get the questions about the details of exactly how you'll either be employed or supported on a fellowship in the fall, and when you might be able to expect a paycheck, and what that check might be, as again, they are slightly different depending on the program. Ruth, do you want to add anything to that?
Just that they should be getting information from their program about signing up for direct deposit. So whether you are employed and get a paycheck, or you're receiving fellowship and get a stipend, we highly encourage you to sign up for direct deposit, and information about how to do that will be forthcoming from your program.
Yes, thank you for that. And please, thank you so much for mentioning the direct deposit. I would like to double mention that checks have a tendency to get mailed to funny addresses. And so we'll just please, direct deposit is by far the best way for us to get funding to you. So please do that, and when you get that information. And we have one other question about if the undergrad institution has been affected by COVID and therefore there are delays in getting the degree certification, what happens now and what should they do? And that is a very common question that has come up that Ruth's team is prepared to deal with. So I'll hand it over.
So you know, we're obviously going to be flexible about that. So what I would suggest is to email one of our admissions staff, Jason Cruz. He will be able to advise you, but we do plan on being flexible, because obviously so many institutions have not been able to do a lot of things with respect to transcripts and degree conferral and so forth. So just email Jason and let him know what your situation is, and he will be able to advise you. I've also written it in the Q&A, so I'll send that with his email address.
Great. So for those of you who are on the Zoom, you'll see it in the answered questions. For those of you who are maybe dialed in or watching this later, we can get that information out to you. Anyone who registered for this will get Jason's email. And I see Jason's listening right now. So sorry, Jason, we're bombarding you with emails. But Derek will send out that email address as well with the other resource packet.
Yes, and kind of to build on that, another email that is super helpful that can answer a lot of your questions is gradapplicant@uci.edu. That will also be included in our resources. So our entire admissions team has access to that account, and obviously all of them are here to help you, because I know each one of you has a number of specific concerns, of course. But while we're waiting for more questions, like to take this moment to plug our orientation one more time. Again, our virtual orientation will be September 25th. So expect a save the date email to come in your inboxes either today or tomorrow, and then more direction on how to sign up for that. It's not mandatory, but it is very, very encouraged. And in fact, as our orientation team goes through and plans for orientation, they're taking all of these questions into consideration in terms of how they plan their orientation, how the modules will look. So please keep asking these great questions, and orientation, it's a very helpful resource every year, but I think going to be extremely, extremely helpful this year in terms of how we deal with this situation going into the fall. So again, September 25th, look in your email for more information on that.
So we have just a few minutes left in this time period. I want to again encourage everyone to ask questions in the chat, but also don't be shy about emailing. Even if we covered it in this town hall and then afterwards you're like, didn't really understand what they said, or I can't remember, or now I've thought of something different, please don't be shy. This is a time in which all of our inboxes are exploding, including yours. And it's just really hard to piece through all of the different information. It's also a time where literally every day we wake up to a slightly different context, and we wait for policy orders and all of these other things. So your questions are never dumb. It's never a wrong time to ask a question. We would much rather answer them for you than have you be wondering. Thank you, Matthew, for asking a great question. Yes, potential delays in arriving to campus affecting establishing California residency. So there is guidance on the University of California website overall that essentially says that if you were intending to establish California residency and you were unable to because of COVID, then that's okay, and we're gonna adjust your tuition accordingly. That has been in place for our existing students, as you might imagine. We haven't yet run into the problem where domestic students haven't been able to make it to California in time, although I can certainly imagine it happening. And based on how the UC system-wide response has been so far, my assumption would be that they will again be flexible in much the same way they have been for our students who are here now. We don't have guidance on those of you arriving in the fall yet, but that is my assumption. So again, try to make it here if you can. It's really important to start engaging with your community here, start getting to know the faculty and other folks. But if you absolutely cannot, the University of California is very committed to supporting you no matter what. Madeline's just asked a question about TAing for fall quarter. So certainly, as I mentioned earlier, TA assignments are handled at the school level and in some cases department or program level. Certainly reach out to those folks and let them know what your challenges are. The undergraduate courses are almost all online. So the likelihood that you are assigned an in-person class, if you've got concerns, maybe a health issue or other things that make you not want to come in person, it's a pretty low likelihood, to be honest. But that doesn't mean you shouldn't still reach out. So certainly talk to the folks who do that. TA assignments, as I mentioned earlier, do not happen until quite late in the summer. So typically, mid-September is when we start to see the TA assignments come out. So you've got plenty of time. That doesn't mean you shouldn't let people know now if you've already got a concern. Certainly, it's always good to give a heads up to your advisor or the grad program director, other folks who might be able to help you with that. I thought I saw another question, but then it just disappeared. So I don't know what happened. Maybe someone pulled it back. But TA training will happen in the fall in its normal schedule, and it will be remote. The TA training will be virtual, as is our orientation and other things. So we're patiently waiting for any more open questions. I would like to hand it over back to Connie and Ruth in case either of them have some additional sort of closing thoughts to share with all of you, and again, to welcome you all here and wish it was under better circumstances. So Connie, any final words?
First, and then I will need to duck out about 5 before 3 for my next meeting. But I want to extend that welcome for sure. And we look forward to having as many of you as we can living in our communities. If you have questions about housing at uci.edu is our general email. There are some specific grad housing emails that you can find on our website if you click on the graduate housing block on the homepage. And yeah, it's a wonderful place to live for those of you coming from other parts of the country. So we look forward to meeting you when you get here.
And I'd like to just add that we are very much looking forward to having you, whether you live with us on campus or live off campus. Housing certainly gets more interesting questions than I do, but we are really looking forward to it, and we're happy to answer any questions that you may have. And as I said, we're doing our best to be as flexible as possible because we realize that this is a really difficult time for everybody. Things change constantly. So, you know, we are here and we will help you in any way we can. So welcome, look forward to meeting some of you and getting to know some of you a little bit later on, whether it's in person or virtual.
Thank you, Ruth. We did get one final question regarding testing. So with the current testing protocols at both the federal and state level, the public health officials are not recommending universal regular testing. What they are recommending is daily symptom checks as well as a few other mechanisms. They're still looking into some particular issues regarding international arrivals and whether we might do some additional there's a word for it, sequestering. Thank you. So those are a little bit in flux, although I expect guidance to come out very soon on that. Again, we are really deferring to the public health expertise on our campus, and they make decisions really rapidly. And so if it comes to be that universal testing becomes recommended, then certainly that is something that we would do with the utmost attention to the privacy and comfort of our student, staff, and faculty population.
And one thing actually I'd like to add before we wrap up, because it looks like we have 7 minutes left to answer your questions, but Dean Hayes actually communicates fairly regularly through daily emails with our current students right now. So if for incoming students, all you have to do to be able to see that is go to our website, which I'm sure you're aware of right now. It's grad, G-R-A-D .uci.edu. And if you click, it says on the very front page, it says click here for updates regarding COVID-19. And you can see the full archive of the dean's daily messages to our current students. So maybe a lot of that information will not apply to you, but you can at least kind of see what our current students are getting on an almost daily basis right now. And it may, you know, answer some of the questions that you may have. So that will continually be updated. And of course, once you're officially welcome into the family, you will be getting all those emails from the dean. So they're very informative. So in case anyone feels like they're able to benefit from them, they are available for public record.
And they're filled with random pop culture references and memes that are at least entertaining to my middle-aged self. So you may or may not get them depending on what your age is, but you can enjoy them anyway. So I want to say thank you again to all of you. I know people probably have 3 o'clock meetings to get to. So please feel free to drop off if you need to. We'll hang out for a few minutes in case there's any additional questions. Again, welcome everyone. And when in doubt, grad@uci.edu gets you a whole lot of help, or at least triaging into other kinds of helpful folks. It's sort of a main mailbox for the graduate division, and we're happy to help you. We're getting lots of thank yous and no more questions. So, oh, and we got a zot. Thank you, Stephanie. That is wonderful. So on that super positive note, we better hang up before you ask us any tough. So thank you, everyone. We hope to see you very soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.